The following production is brought to you by the Talkin Buds Leafs Show.
Here we go, Talkin Buds Leaf Show, Four Nations edition. Before we get in to Saturday night, Super Saturday, as they were calling it on the broadcast, I said this after Wednesday, and I just want to reiterate it now that we're several days into this tournament. I am the first one to shit all over the National Hockey League and call it a terrible product. And for the most part, it is not a great product night in and night out. But I got to take my hat off to everybody because I was texting you throughout the day yesterday. I'm like, I have a pit in my stomach. This is an exhibition tournament. At the end of Thursday, you're going to get a Four Nations trophy that has no history behind it. It's just a trophy that they've built. It doesn't, there's no prestige in it. And I'm sitting here all day yesterday with a pit in my stomach. Like, it's like a Leaf Game 7 pit where it's like, I'm so nervous to watch this hockey game. The pageantry, first of all, Finland and Sweden had an absolute banger earlier in the day. Two rival countries just going toe-to-toe, overtime, fantastic hockey game. We get to the nightcap, the pageantry, the anthems, all the controversy around the anthems, the fans singing the Canadian national anthem, just like goosebumps all the way up and down your body. GSP introducing Team Canada,
that was awesome.
Yeah, goosebumps up and down your body. And before we get into the game, I was reflecting on it this morning, and I was like, you know what? In a lot of ways, that was like watching a Leaf Game 7. It was, you're nervous. The team you're cheering for can't generate any offense and can't get to the middle of the ice. Auston Matthews and Mitch Marner in a high-intensity, highly physical, highly emotional game are absolutely nowhere to be found. It ticked all the boxes of a Leaf Game 7.
Yep. It was very Leafy in terms of the feeling I had going in terms of, I just thought there was no way they were winning this game. I didn't have any reason for it. It just felt like that's how it was going to go. It was going to put the pressure all back on our nation, and you just knew the U.S. were going to win that game. I don't know why. I should have bet my whole betting bankroll on it because it just seemed like it was the obvious choice, but it was very Leafy. It was two good teams playing each other, high in skill. One team had a better goalie than the other, which is another storyline. But I just thought one team played a way better defensive system than the other, and that was the difference. And the other team was able to capitalize on an opportunity, and that was the difference in the game. It was a pretty tight game. I thought both teams kind of took turns controlling the play, but the U.S. just clogged the middle of the ice, let nothing through. A lot of Canadian players couldn't generate anything, and when you have Connor Hellebuck in the net and you're not giving up any tough chances, it's going to be tough to beat that team.
Let's talk about the first 9 seconds. So they show in the warm-up, Matthew Tkachuk goes over and challenges Brandon Hagel. There's history there. That's a Florida Panther against a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning. So there's some emotional history there. 2 seconds into the game, the gloves come off. The frenzy of emotions. Okay, the puck drops, you're fired up, and right off the draw, those two guys are dropping the gloves. Then after they're done, right off the next draw, Brady Tkachuk and Sam Bennett dropping the gloves. Then. Well, so that's 4 seconds in. 5 seconds later, JT Miller and Colton Parayko dropping the gloves. Just it's so funny how you always got to remember hockey players are hockey players. And going into this tournament, everyone was like, they're not going to care. It's just an exhibition tournament. No, these guys, this felt like a war. This was a legit, that was as intense of an emotional experience watching a hockey game as you will ever feel. I'll never forget those opening 9 seconds. I'll talk like 10 years from now. We'll be saying, you remember in the Four Nations face-off, 9 seconds in, there's 3 fights between Canada and the U.S.
Yeah, it was memorable. There's no two ways about it. It was shocking. It was shocking. It's so funny how these guys are all skilled players, and in a normal Tuesday night, you would never see that. But since there's no Tom Wilsons or Ryan Reeves or Olivier's on the ice, Brandon Hagel and Matthew Tkachuk just look at each other and go, let's just get this kicked off early. It was crazy. I don't know what JT Miller was doing trying to fight Colton Parayko.
Well,
that was insane. But Brady Tkachuk is literally Brock Lesnar.
Yes,
he looks like
is.
Brock Lesnar. He's an absolute unit. Sam Bennett did his absolute best. I thought all of them were pretty good tilts too. I mean, I don't know why Miller fought Parayko because he couldn't. That guy's an absolute monster. But I thought all 3 of them were pretty good tilts. It was at some point I'm like, are we going to drop the puck here? But I mean, that's you're right. It was made for an extremely memorable moment. It got the crowd fired up, and it just showed you that all these guys are so bought into best on best international hockey.
Yeah, 100%, man. And poor JT Miller, there's a clip going around on Twitter of him trying to land an uppercut on Parayko, and he misses him completely. He misses him completely, and then ends up punching himself in the head.
Well, it's just like, dude, like how tall is Colton Parayko? Like 6'7"? Like,
yeah, like he's
like
he's
trying
a
to
monster.
fight, just trying to fight a guy who's 6'7". Like you're not gonna. It's gonna be a tough go.
As far as the game goes, I think you summed it up perfectly. You have to tip your hat to Team USA and just how quickly that group has come together. When I'm watching the game, it was about halfway through the second period, and I just said to myself, like, there's a cohesiveness to Team USA that Team Canada just doesn't appear to have. They just look like they've been together longer. They look like they've had more practices. They look crisper with their passing. They look more aligned in what their defensive strategy is. Whereas like Canada, it looks like everyone's still trying to figure it out there and trying to gel. I thought after an amazing first game against Sweden, the Sidney Crosby, Nate McKinnon, Mark Stone line really struggled. There was a speed discrepancy. And I think when you've got the first line of McDavid, Marner, and Reinhart out there, 3 guys who can skate, it's not as noticeable. But once you got into lines 2, 3, and 4 for Team Canada, you could really, there was no disputing who the faster hockey team was.
Yeah, I wonder if I would credit that to just the U.S. national team program. I feel like those guys, when they were coming up in their junior years, just had more time together, even though they're not all the same age. But it seems like the U.S. national program, it's like those guys seem to get together more often than dudes who are just spread all over the CHL. So, I mean, I wonder if that's kind of a factor. But yeah, it was just one team looked like they had a game plan and were on the same page, and the other team kind of looked like an all-star team trying to just take the puck and skate it through all 3 zones and try to make a play. And as good as the best player in the world is, 97, as good as McKinnon is, when you're playing the other best players in the world and you're playing maybe one of the best defensive cores I've ever seen, it's not going to be easy to wheel and deal. So, I mean, I think it's a great lesson for this country, for this team, on what they're up against now. So if we do go into the finals, if we look forward to a year, I mean, would I like to see them win that game? Yes. Am I heartbroken they lost? No, because I think it's a good measuring stick. It's like this is what they bring now. They're going to play a good system. They're fast. They got great goaltending. Their defense is stacked. And we had a game plan going of here of loading our roster with winners, and we thought that was going to be the formula here. But if you played them last night, you saw what they bring. If you play them in the final and you see again, then next year's the big dance. So it's a good pre-scout on what this team's going to bring and what's going to take to beat them.
Talk a little bit about the difference in defense cores. You were texting me last night talking about how the U.S. defense core is way more mobile than the Canadian defense core.
Yeah, it's faster. It's more mobile. Slavin can skate. Werenski's an animal. You see McAvoy out there being a savage, hitting dudes.
McAvoy leveled McDavid twice.
Yeah, like they just more mobile. And you look at like I like Devon Taves a lot. I haven't really watched him play hockey a whole lot. Not having Makar in, obviously very, very detrimental to the Canadians' chances of winning that game, because he's the only guy who can really make a play out of his own zone because he's got the speed and the ability to do it. But Sanheim, I love Travis Sanheim. I'd put him in a Leaf uniform in about 10 seconds. I love the size. I love the way he plays, but he's not really fleet of foot. Parayko's not a fleet of foot guy. I thought Doughty played well, but he's on the back half, and it just seemed like the U.S. was able to make more plays in the offensive zone because of how mobile their D was, and were able to break out the puck more efficiently because of their speed and ability to make a first pass and find a little bit more open space than the Canadian defense did.
Well, we should also mention too, we didn't mention this off the top, but Cale Makar ahead of the game not playing. He's dealing with an illness, so they bring in Thomas Harley, and you and I are like, who?
I thought he was great, though. I thought he played. I thought the broadcasts were pumping his tires, and I thought it was well deserved. He ended up getting a lot of ice time, and I actually thought he looked pretty good looking player. I thought he played well.
That's a tough spot too, man. Like, you got to tip your hat to the guy. Like, look, essentially the best defenseman in the world is unavailable, and you're coming in to take his place. That's a lot of pressure. I agree. Yeah. He held his own just fine.
But if I honestly think that game went exactly the way I thought it was going to go. I think the Canadians have more of the top end players, and basically McDavid and McKinnon. And the forward and the U.S., like, even though they have great players, they aren't really so explosive offensively. But they won the game because their D is better, they're more mobile, and their goaltender is better. And that was the difference in the game. Like a Leaf Game 7, the margins were thin, and to me, that was the difference. It wasn't about Auston Matthews and Jack Hughes. That line didn't really do much. The Kachucks weren't really a factor. It was just Dylan Larkin had an opportunity to pot one on a 2-on-1, and Binnington couldn't make the save, and that was the difference in the game.
This NHL season has been as predictable as a puck rolling on its edge. No one knows where it's going. But that just means there's time for your favorite team to figure things out, and games left for you to get in the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL.
It's super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app, select your team, and place your first bet. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/ice.
Let's revisit the Jordan Binnington discussion. I think, again, was he terrible? No. But the 2 goals he let in weren't great. And when you've got Connor Hellebuck, you've got the front runner for the Vezina at the other end of the ice. You can't make those you can't let softies in, because now I didn't necessarily love Team Canada's offensive zone strategy. Again, it was a bit leafy for me. At times they were way too cute. Yeah. I was sitting on my couch yelling "shoot." Again, another Leaf Game 7-ism. Sitting on my couch last night yelling "shoot" so much. Just everyone trying to make pretty passes. Yep. And when you got a guy like that in the net, man, like you're not gonna get like the McDavid goal is an anomaly that only the best player in the world can score on that guy. If you're going to score on Hellebuck, you got to get a dirty one. You got to throw a dirty one at the net, and you got to be prepared to bang in a rebound. And to your point, and I think we're going to dive deeper into this team isn't necessarily built that way. And I agree with your take, and I'm seeing a lot of people sharing your take on social media about, like, this is a really good pre-scout for the Olympics next year. And I hope that the management team, because my understanding, it's going to be essentially the same management team and the same coaching staff that's putting together the Olympic team next year. I hope that they can take this away and maybe tweak things and go, maybe we don't need an entire line of Tampa Bay Lightning players.
God, I hate that line.
Yes. Maybe we could get a guy
God.
like a Zach Hyman who's more difficult, who gets in on the forecheck and makes life more difficult for
and
these
has a
defensemen.
presence in front of the net.
Maybe we could have a guy like Mark Scheifele, who is a very high-end talented player who also brings that edge and is kind of difficult to play against. I definitely think that when you look also, like Petrangelo's supposed to be there. He's not. I don't think Drew Doughty is going to the Olympics next year. I think this is probably his last time playing with Team Canada on an international level. You never know, but that's just my thought. I definitely think that there is room for improvement here and room to tweak certain areas of this roster.
Yeah, they definitely galaxy brained the winners. The let's pick guys who are winners. I think they kind of galaxy brained that a bit. I mean, we're only 2 games in. I don't want to start crapping on guys, but to me, the mentality has to be, let them win the battle, but let's win the war. And winning the war is coming away with that gold medal a year from now. So let's take this tournament for what it is. If the US wins this tournament, good for them. They're feeling great about themselves. Obviously, it was inevitable that they were going to be a great hockey nation based on the population and just the growth of the game. But yeah, you have to kind of go back to the drawing board after this and start to reevaluate some things. Like I can't stand that Tampa line. I think Braden Point is one of the best players in the world. He can slot in with anyone. And I love how Brandon Hagel dropped the gloves at Matthew Tkachuk. That's the type of guy you want. But I thought that line was very, very ineffective. I thought that fourth line was extremely ineffective. I thought Sidney Crosby looked slow. I thought Mark Stone looked slow.
Nate McKinnon was not great.
Yeah, you look at just the speed of the U.S. and obviously you want a good mix of dudes doing different things, but maybe you have to look back at the roster when you're reconstructing it and you maybe have to get a little more speed. Find guys who can play on this team who have a little bit more speed, who can get on that forecheck. I know Zach Hyman's not a superstar, but the guy scored 50 goals last year and he forechecks like a complete animal. So like that's the type of guy you need to look at and possibly think about adding going into next year. I think they need more speed and I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens on Monday. We'll see what happens if they end up going to the final. They could totally redeem themselves. It's pretty tough to get together in 2 games and really be a cohesive unit. But I think I think this is a really good test to see what they need to work on going into next year.
Do you think that Team USA is dispelling a lot of this thought that we need to bring guys in who already have established chemistry? Because Auston Matthews and Jack Hughes, even though I said Matthews was a non-factor in the Canada game, and he was, but if you just watch them on a shift-to-shift basis, they're finding each other and they look pretty good. The Tkachuk brothers don't play together. You put them with Eichel, that line is a menace. I think the thought process behind the Tampa line is, this is a good line in the National Hockey League. If we keep them together and we bring these guys in together, they already have an established chemistry, and then they're not trying to sort of sort it out, I guess. It's really confusing. It's a difficult line to walk.
It's really hard, man.
Yeah, I'm not criticizing these guys at all. Like it is a really, really, really challenging thing that you have to figure out, because by that same token, like I thought in the first game, Marner and McDavid, it took them 2.5 periods to figure out where to be with one another. And when you come in like this and you only have a few practices and you're trying to gel, it's really hard. And that to me is what had impressed me the most in watching Team USA. They look like, take your hat off to Mike Sullivan and the USA coaching staff. I don't know what they've been doing in their practices, but they just look more prepared than Team Canada did.
Yeah. I mean, and I also thought and at the end of the day too, like Team Canada's best players have to play better. Like I thought Nate McKinnon was awful. I thought he was terrible. I thought he generated nothing. He couldn't get anything going. He couldn't, even if his speed game wasn't working, he did a very Leafy thing and decided to not adjust his game at all to try to do anything. I want to be careful to not get too far ahead of ourselves here and start kind of just ripping everything apart, because this is the first time that this has happened in a very long time. So I don't know. Let's see what happens on Monday, and let's see if they can get to the final and play this team again, and see if it's their turn to adjust their game plan against that team, because it's clear how they're going to play and what you need to do to counter what they're going to do to you.
Well, and they can't. It's on John Cooper and the coaching staff to get them refocused for Monday, man, because the Finns are no pushover. This is not, you're not just going to walk in and like Canada controls their own destiny in the sense that like a regulation win puts them in the final and it makes what happens with Sweden and the US later that night irrelevant. But you can't just be thinking about getting your revenge on Thursday, because if you overlook this team on Monday, you're not going to get there. This is the Finns are a good hockey team.
I think what's interesting as well is if you look at the game against Sweden, I think it was pretty similar to the game they played against the US. I didn't think they dominated that game. I also thought there were stretches in that game where they were kind of playing the same way they were playing against the US. I just think Sweden gave them a little more opportunity for explosive plays to be made. But I think that's 2 games in a row where you look at the 60 minutes of hockey and there's more to be desired from the Canadian offense point of view in terms of getting more ozone time and getting more shots to the net. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement based off both games. I don't think the first game was perfect either.
No. All right. This is the Talkin Buds Leaf show after all. So I wanted to spend a bit of time just once again hitting on the fact that our 2 best players, the 2 pillars of this organization, 2 of the 3 pillars of the organization are just, it's a highly physical, there's no space, there's lots of emotion, and neither of these guys can do anything. And I just came away feeling discouraged. I mean, and I don't know why. I think 100 times.
In my opinion, I think you're overreacting a little bit. I think. All right. I don't think anyone really got anything going in that game.
No, it's true.
I thought McDavid, obviously when McDavid gets the puck and has room to skate, he just sticks out like a sore thumb. But if you really, really go down the rosters of both teams, like who was really being extremely dynamic offensively? I actually thought Marner was okay. Yeah. I thought he was actually okay. And I thought Auston Matthews actually put together a really good defensive effort.
Yes, he made a couple plays in the D zone on the back check that were really, really good.
Now, the one thing I will say is in the 2024-2025 season, in both a Maple Leaf uniform and a US uniform, Auston Matthews is having a really hard time creating offense for himself. Yeah, I think it's happened all year, and I think it's happening in this tournament as well. Because if you're, I know he was great defensively, and I just kind of stuck up for him a little bit, but you're right in the sense where this is one of the best players in the world, and it's not just this tournament; it's all year that he's kind of had a hard time getting any sort of offensive opportunities for himself.
Yeah,
so that is kind of concerning.
Well, and you wonder where he's at with the injury, and I don't know. It's just. But you know what? You make a good point. You didn't really come away from the game last night thinking of any one player specifically, being like, no, that guy was dominant. It was like, no, the U.S. just played a better, like I said, cohesive game than Team Canada did.
Yeah, I think there was just a collective effort there. I don't think there was one U.S. player that really stuck out. I mean, a guy who I haven't really watched who I think is a great player is Brock Faber. Like, I think that was a good showcase for him. I think he's a really great player, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think anyone really stuck out last night.
So, as I mentioned earlier, Team Canada controls their destiny. All they need is the Americans are in the final regardless of what happens Monday night against Sweden. Team Canada needs a regulation win over the Finns, and if they get that, they will also be in Thursday night's final. But like I said earlier, man, I watched that Finland-Sweden game on Saturday. That was a banger of a hockey game. That was 2 pretty evenly matched teams going toe-to-toe, and it really came down to whose goalie's gonna let them down. That's what that game came down to. And as Team Canada, we're kind of in that similar situation. I mean, you go into the game on Monday and you're like, Jordan Binnington is a wild card. And you're right. If you compare the 2 performances between Sweden and the U.S., they're kind of similar in a lot of ways. So it'll be interesting to see what John Cooper does if he mixes up lines, if he does like moves guys around. At the start of the third period, he flipped McDavid and McKinnon. And that didn't really, I don't know. I just would like to see a shift in mentality. Stop skating. There was a lot. It was so Leafy.
Just one and done all night.
Yes.
I just want to hit on Jordan Binnington again quickly because I do think this guy is an extremely tough spot. Because if you look at the history of international goaltending for the Canadian hockey team. It's very rich. It's Martin Brodeur, it's Roberto Luongo, it's Carey Price. Those are some serious shoes to fill. And I'm watching Carey Price on the broadcast last night, and I'm like, buddy, you're still 37 years old. Like,
put the pads on.
Put the pads on, get down there. But I mean, has he been awful? No. But that first goal against Gensel, like that can't go in through the 5-hole. And they were aiming for the 5-hole all night. I'll give him the Larkin one because that was just a great shot, and that never should have been a 2-on-1 in the first place. But it is, you do not really feel super confident with him in the net. And I think when you look ahead at the Olympics, I know the best Canadian goaltender in the NHL right now is Logan Thompson. So, I mean, I guess we'll see what the Caps do and what he does going into next year, or if you try to give a look at Adin Hill. But I mean, I don't want to crap on the guy because he hasn't been awful, but I mean, I would be lying if I said that I feel confident with him in the net. There's just something that isn't making me feel super confident about the guy.
Yeah, I agree. I've got like I hate to say it, but I've got a Samsonov feeling with him, where like anytime anything is thrown at the net, you're just like, oh my God, don't go in. Like, please don't go in.
Yeah. It just seems, it's just like, I'm so used to watching Anthony Stolarz play net this year, and you just see the way and even Hellebuck's the same. It's just like they look so big in the net, and Binnington does not look big to the net. He looks like he's scrambly. It looks like there's a lot of wide open net to shoot at, and I don't, maybe that's just my perspective from watching the broadcast, but I don't know. That's going to be an extremely touchy situation. I think it could have been a lot worse than it's been already. Like, if he was awful last night, it'd be all on him. But I thought he was good enough to get them by. But I think that's also something they really have to sit down and think about. I don't care that this guy won a Stanley Cup in 2019. That was a long time ago. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what they do going into next year. If Logan Thompson still plays well for the Caps, if they kind of shift towards him.
All right. Well, we're going to get out of here now. Like, Team Canada will face Finland on Monday. We'll be back sometime on Monday to discuss that game. I got to be honest with you, Ryan. I'm kind of dreading going back to watching David Kampf and Pontus Holmberg after watching a few days of best on, but just the speed and the skill that you watch on display in these games. And it's like, it really does. O-Dog talks about this on Overdrive all the time about how watered down the league is because there's so many teams, and you watch this and it's like, oh yeah, like this is how, like, you're telling me I got to go back and watch fucking David Kampf play hockey again after this. This is tough.
Or even just when you watch like the defense cores of this team, and it's like, I really like Chris Tanev and Jake McCabe, but there's some good defensemen out there that do not play for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
No.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
tough.
it's also funny too how you watch like the Leafs play Tampa Bay, and Anthony Cirelli looks like a very good hockey player, but in this best on best tournament, he looks like Pontus Holmberg to me.
Yes.
Like, it's just like I'm watching Anthony Cirelli out there. I'm watching Pontus Holmberg right now.
Yes. Just a guy out there skating.
Yeah. I don't want a guy on my team who's a penalty kill specialist and best on best hockey. I don't.
No.
I'm sorry.
No. Well, you got Marner. Like, that's the beauty of Mitch Marner, is like he's the Leafs, one of the Leafs' top 2 penalty killers. Put him out there, and he can generate offense for you when it's 5-on-5. All right, we're gonna get out of here. Like I said earlier, we'll be back after Canada Finland. If you'd like to join us for that, hit the like and subscribe button below. If you're listening to the audio version, please do the same.
Spread the word. Tell your friends.
We really appreciate it. We will see you guys on Monday.